Well, I think I might have to change that intro at some point.
Nah.
In the not too distant future with the old Hail Murray, huh? Half of that is still going to be with us, so the other half might not, with some news that's out there. So we'll get into that. Welcome to TCR Live. It's been a little while. I am joined by the full band. The full band is together. I've got Mr. Aaron Van Buren with the beautiful TCR shirt that I sent to him. I'm glad you got it. I'm glad you wearing it. I'm glad it fits. It looks great on you, better than it looks on me. We have Kyler Bird joining us from way down in Texas and in his new dig. So glad to have you with us. And we got Troy Honecker from Arizona repping. The only one of us actually in Arizona. So it's good to have you guys all together. There's a lot to talk about. So we'll get into all of it, but real quick, going around the horn, Aaron, how are you, sir?
I am great. And to quote Ron Wolfley, "Ding dong, the witch is dead."
Yes, it is indeed. And we will definitely get into the whole Kliff and Keim news. So, Mr. Bird, how are you?
I'm good, Joseph. I'm just pleased to be here on a beautiful day with fans from 4 states and 3 time zones, and we can all celebrate Steve Keim no longer being the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm here for it, and I'm happy to see you guys.
We got a comment. Who let AVB out of jail?
I work in a high school setting now, and first-year teacher, man. That life, that learning curve, I'm still going through it. But I make these when I can.
Yes. So I think we need to find someone from the Pacific time zone, right?
We do.
Yeah. Would that be like the 5th Infinity Stone or something? Or whatever it is?
Yes. We will rule the YouTubes.
The Cardinals fan in Seattle.
Yes.
Technically, I think I go Pacific time in the summer.
Every so
like
often,
that, right?
Yeah.
But then we got to find someone from Mountain Zone time.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. Okay. Troy,
All right.
how are you, dude?
I'm good. I'm stoked to be back. New energy. There's so much to talk about, and this last couple of weeks we're kind of pulling teeth there, but we're here. We're having fun, and I wish I remembered to wear my TCR shirt. I wore it yesterday, and I didn't think about it, and I kind of slipped my mom.
Well, I'm glad you wore it and enjoyed it. So, I appreciate you all being here. Let's say hey to some of the folks in the chat real quick. Glarple, thanks for being here. Now we can finally get that for every time, during the video or during the season, I put up a poll, what do you expect for the outcome of the Cardinals' upcoming game? Or at least I did that until the season went the way it did. And Glarple always wanted a 4-4 tie. So I appreciate
Scorigami.
Yes, Scorigami, right. We've got Silver Wolf here. Thanks for being here. Mentioning Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham. We'll interview Thursday. I actually think he may be a good hire. We'll get into that. I'll talk about the GM candidates. We got Chris Hart. Thanks for being here. What's up, everyone? We have Gary Shaw hanging out with us. Grateful Keim is gone, but little faith in Michael Bidwell finding the right people. Okay. We have Bob. Let's go. Thanks for hanging out with us. We have Lord Dane. Hello. Thanks for hanging out with us. We have Michael Evans. Hi, guys. We appreciate you hanging out with us. We have Simon, longtime supporter of the channel. Hey, everyone. Hallelujah. Our prayers are answered, right? And yes. So, we got one more person. Agent 40 said, we did it, Joe. We did it. So, listen, there's a lot of excitement, with folks with the moves, and Troy, you mentioned kind of a different energy. Speaking of energy, Aaron's giving us some kind of weird energy and his ceiling energy. But before we get into
phone life,
right, for the win. Before we get into just the deep analysis and getting into everything, what I'd really like to do is kind of go around and just tell me how did you feel when you heard the news, or how do you feel, what's the energy you feel about the Cardinals right now with the Keim and the Kliff news, and even if you want to include that with the Hopkins and and with the direction, and we'll talk about the Michael Bidwell press conference, what we heard from him. Just what is your vibe right now about the Cardinals? Aaron, we'll start with you.
I didn't know what to think when they said that he was going to have a scheduled press conference for Monday at 2:30 or whatever it was. And I remember I was actually teaching my 6-hour weights class, and my students actually told me, "Hey, Scoop, don't bite the cord. Sorry, my new cat is causing a ruckus." They actually told me, and I had thought I heard something about Kingsbury, but when they said Keim also got let go too, I started jumping up and down. Like, I was so relieved and happy for it, because I know I basically, long story short, I disliked the hiring and the pairing from the start. And 4 years later of one heck of a roller coaster that I hope we never duplicate, we should be free from that and finding someone who can draft talent and a coach that can actually use Kyler Murray in the right way. So I feel very relieved and happy.
Okay. Kyler, what's your vibe, dude?
It is relieved. It's bittersweet in the sense that I'm okay with both of them being gone. But the apprehension of having to go through even a half rebuild, a minor rebuild, it's just especially with the news of Hopkins coming out, that kind of signals at least some type of rebuild, or at least retooling, especially since you've got Kyler Murray, and sorry to break it to some of you guys, but he's not going anywhere. He is the quarterback of the Cardinals, and they're going to retool around him. But the retooling is painful, and it usually is for us. And to know that we're still probably, again, 2 years away from even potentially contending is kind of heartbreaking. But very relieved that Keim is gone, because I just don't think he was the right guy for that job for a very long time, and that one was way, way, way overdue. But Kingsbury, I don't think he was the right guy for the job. I think he was out of his depth in that position. I feel bad that a man lost his job. I'm glad that he has $100 bills to wipe his tears with.
Right.
Because I don't if I lose my job. But I think he genuinely gave everything he had. And it's just the sad part of life that sometimes that's not good enough. And in this case, him and Kyler and this iteration of the Cardinals just didn't work out. So I do wish him well. And if he wants to coach again, he'll coach somewhere. And I'm glad he made a lot of money doing it. So congrats, dude. And I'm excited to see a coach that can actually use a talented franchise quarterback and not see my team throw that away.
Yeah, I feel that. Troy, what's your feeling about the whole situation?
I mean, yeah, kind of echoing what everyone's saying. It's exciting. It's kind of, changing direction to shift. And I think it's a good sign that Bidwell had the courage to do that, because I think, previous iterations, I think, we would have sat on the contract like for another 2 or 3 years, and we've just been pulling teeth. So I appreciated that. Now, like the chain, like who knows what's that next, maybe the next coach won't be good. We keep starting all over again. It's the fear of the unknown is definitely out there, but it's a kick in the right direction. The names and kind of the process that Bidwell said yesterday it sounds good. He said all the right things. That's kind of the easiest part of it all, saying it. Now he actually has to do it, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, I'm just excited to see some new energy, see what's next. And the D-Hop news kind of sucks, but I think it's signaling the right thing. And I think it's kind of a good signal that they know where they are in the process, where sometimes it seemed like Keim would go all in, but not go fully all in. And it's just like, are you sure you know where we're at in this process and what we need and don't need? And I think the D-Hop signaling is to be right, that it's not maybe a full rebuild, but 2024 is probably the year that we're actually going to start picking up some steam again. and D-Hop probably won't be a part of that process. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me, when I think about how I feel about where things are at, there's a certain energy that I just try to put my finger on. And the best thing I can compare it to in terms of how I feel is when I moved from Arizona to Texas to go to grad school, and I'd been in Arizona for decades, for a long time, had friends, family there. And then I moved to, Texas, and I would sometimes wake up in the middle, like when I was half asleep, just jolt awake, like, what am I doing here? My friends are back. Like this anxiety about being someplace new, this sort of like, am I doing something the wrong thing? But at the same time, this excitement about why I'm here and what the future holds. And I feel like there's a little bit of energy for me in how I feel about where things are with the Cardinals, where there's this part of me that's like, okay, I hope what we did was really the right move. And I know everyone's going to say, of course it's the right move, but sincerely, like, I hope we did the right thing. I think we did, but there's still some anxiety about moving off of what has been familiar. But there's also this excitement. Okay, who are we going to bring in? You mentioned that process Bidwell outline that I thought sounded really good. I liked everything I heard from him. Is that going to bring us someone who's a legitimate general manager who's going to do this thing right? A coach? Are we going to do this thing right and build this thing right? So it's that sort of anxiety, but excitement that I feel, right? And I that's kind of how I am experiencing this, but I am excited about it. There's some new energy. I'm going to say hey to some of the folks that have jumped in since we got started. We got No Donnier, Kick Rocks, Clownsburg. Well, listen, I know people like to say crap about Kliff Kingsbury, and I think he's a good dude. Maybe his art choices are a little kind of frat boyish, but he's, through Hard Knocks, he seems like a good guy. And I know people like to joke around that. That's just not me. I don't like to insult people like that. Just, I can say someone didn't do a good job without saying that's me. I wish him the best. He seems like a good guy. I think Michael Bidwell was sincere about everything he said about Kliff, that he personally really liked him and respected what he did and his hard work. He just needs to go somewhere. He needs to be an offensive coordinator under an experienced head coach and further adjust his scheme to the NFL, get that experience. And it would not shock me if 10 years from now, he's a successful head coach somewhere, having gone through that process. But right now, he needed to move on, right? We got Jordan P. Saying D-Hop definitely wanted out, saw this coming when he didn't travel with the team last 2 games because of injury. But last year he was with the team when he was injured. I had to wonder if Hopkins, and the report is that, isn't necessarily that he's requested a trade or anything like that. But I just had to wonder if he doesn't want to be around for that retool, that reset, whatever we want to call it. So that, to me, I'm not surprised about this report that we're seeing that Hopkins, they might look to trade Hopkins. I don't think it's as much about discontent as much as about, they look at it and say 2023 is going to be a reset year. Hopkins is going to be 32 before we're contending again. Let's give him a chance to go somewhere where he can be with a competitive, a team that's going to be competitive, and let's get some assets to retool. But we'll talk about that more. We got Mikey Desert Cardinals. Thanks for being here. Bidwell casting the net far and wide. Great to see. I agree. Lucas Rothplitz, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It's rebuild till Kyler comes back in 24 season. Just expect next season to be a lost season. Do not bring Kyler back until fully healthy, 12 months. We got JP. We have interim co-GMs. Yep, we do with Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson. Let's see who else. We got Grandizer. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you, all you do, holding down the chat. Lance is not happy, but he's here. He was a big supporter of Kliff, so he's not happy about that. We got Robert.
Be the minority.
Yeah. Well, there's there's only a handful of people who were. I think that's probably accurate. Yep. Good evening, Jets. It's been a while. Thanks for being here. Let's see if there's anyone else. Wolf Langus, we need a QB for next year too. We'll talk about that more. We got D'Lo, much love, ready for the future. Let's see if there's anyone else. All right, I think we've hit on everyone at least once in the comments. Thank you for everyone who's hanging out with us. Okay. So let's talk about, I mean, we'll get to the Hoppy and stuff more. We'll get to all this, but let's start with, we've talked a little bit about our feelings about Kliff. Let's talk about the Michael Bidwell press conference, what we thought about what we heard, what stood out to us about what he's talked about with the process and other things. I know I've mentioned a few of those things. Aaron, what were your thoughts with the Michael Bidwell press conference?
I had been wanting to get to listen to most of it, but I only ended up hearing very bits and pieces of it. So I think that the way that he's going about it is good. I mean, and just knowing that they have been bringing in, at least for right now, the first GM candidate in Jerry Reese, who did help the Giants win their last 2 Super Bowls. That was a good start. And I'm interested to see what that is. I would have to do, I want to do more research on, why they ended up parting ways. But I think that, Reese drafted some good players. But back to Bidwell, it's a bold move that I'm glad he made. And I remember reading articles when they went to the Super Bowl, like, Michael was doing stuff that Bill never did. He let the team grow. He's willing to try to, push the envelope and go that extra mile. And we're lucky enough that we kind of had some doubts about Michael for a while, but now he's kind of not redeemed himself, but kind of like shown that we can actually trust him to make the right decision when it's time to. And so I'm really excited to see what this GM search comes up to, and the openness for everything was well appreciated.
Nice. What do you think of the press conference, Kyler?
I did get to watch it last night, and I was impressed with Bidwell the whole way through. Really, he at the very least said the right thing. And I think it at least points to some type of self-awareness of what his fan base feels and how they've been feeling about things. And I think he talked about things and approached them in a really appropriate way. I think he was hurt because I'm sure firing people is a horrible feeling. And I don't think he took any joy in what he had to do. But in a sense, I feel bad for him because he's put himself into the loneliest of positions, in which right now he is the decision maker of the Arizona Cardinals, period. And in a coaching search, he doesn't have a GM. He doesn't have the long-standing GM who's been in the building for 20 years that he's leaned on, which I think is good and gives me even more hope that maybe we get a few things right this time, that we will have completely new energy in the building. But he's in for a lonely process, and one in which at the end, whatever the end result of the GM and the coach search is, it's on him. He hired the GM and they hired the coach together. And that's tough. I wouldn't want to make those type of decisions. But the fact that he obviously for political reasons did not say this outright, but he very much intimated the mistakes in the extension and that the financial cost isn't something that's going to hold the team back from being successful. And he'll pay what it takes to get the best talent out there. He did throw in the best coach might not be the biggest name. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that means, but that he openly said, because he knows his fan base is concerned about it, that like the money is not an object. We'll find the best people around this team. I think it was encouraging. He did a really good job, and he is not his father. Like mm-hmm. Michael Bidwell wants to win. We've gone about it the wrong way in the past, obviously, but he wants to win, and he doesn't want to just sit around and collect checks from the team. So I respect it, and I respect him for making the tough decisions.
Yeah, Troy, what do you think about the press conference?
I thought it was good, especially considering, juxtapose that to the Jim Irsay one where he's throwing a tantrum, having a fit. Like, I feel pretty lucky to have Bidwell collected, calm, cool, and collected up there. But yeah, he said all the right things you want to hear. I appreciate that he really kind of emphasized the external searches going on, that he wasn't, he acknowledged that he did do some internal interviews with, Quentin
Adrian
Harris
EQ.
and Adrian, yep. And then he did, I'm assuming he interviewed, or he's going to interview Vance. He said there's going to be one internal candidate.
He said that he hadn't yet, but he obviously will.
Yeah, which I think all of us, that gives us all a bit of pause and worry, but I think you kind of have to out of respect for Vance, and like it's like a formality, just because like James Betcher, was supposedly a strong candidate in the Kliff, or the year after Arians, exactly. So yeah, it's good. It's great. You want to hear. I think it was kind of good for him to feel a little bit of the journalistic angst coming back in his face, because they're professionals too, and they have to work and deal with this organization on a day-to-day basis. And just some of the disaster that was this season was definitely part and due to some of the leniency going on in that building, which I'm sorry flows all the way up to the top. So it's good to hear. Again, it's all words until it gets penned. It's all words until you see the stuff on the field, and I'll be waiting till then. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's better than Bill Bidwell, which isn't saying much, but
Yeah, I think the whole Bill Bidwell I think his biggest deal, he was stubborn about the way he did things. He owned his team for so long, and it was set in the way, I think there was just such a reputation for the Cardinals of kind of just having a way they do things. And the Bengals as an organization are kind of like that too. I really liked what I saw in the press conference, and from things I'm hearing, not just from you gentlemen, but from other people on social media, it feels like that press conference, coupled with the fact that he made the move when people didn't think he would, was a win for Michael Bidwell, right? The firing Kliff.
Yes.
And even though Keim technically wasn't fired, he resigned. How I don't know what happened behind closed doors, but I have to wonder how much of that was a conversation, a dialogue about, why don't you do this to gracefully step away? I don't know. But regardless, the fact that they're gone, and then all the things he said at the press conference, the way he approached it, and the way he although he said things tactfully, he kind of addressed head on the concerns and the issues and the dysfunction and things, and so it seems like it was a big win for Michael, the whole deal. And I think he's gained some newfound respect from some of the fans who didn't think he would, thought he would just be cheap and, not, deal with the cost. I've always been kind of a fan of Michael Bidwell. Since he took over, he's not, he's made some mistakes. I've repeatedly said, like, that the independent study clause, I think, was a mistake. Whatever you might think of Kyler, it was bad PR and it got out. But I also think he's a guy who has shown a willingness to take the mea culpa. Like that was out within 24 hours. He signed off on drafting a quarterback in the number one overall a year after taking one in the first round. If your ego's in the way, as an owner, you don't sign off on that, right?
Yeah.
And he did this, right? He is not, now he doesn't come out and necessarily say I made a mistake, but he's willing to take the PR hit to walk back mistakes, right?
I think it's important too that he recognized, for the trajectory of the franchise as a whole, he gave Kliff the 3 years, and they got better every year. They made the playoffs. We got blown out. Everything's been a dumpster fire since then. And this season, not coming anywhere close to the playoff, is his limit as an owner. Like, him setting some type of expectations that this team needs to have a certain level of success, and giving you another year to get back to 8-9 or 9-8 isn't good enough anymore. We have to get someone new. That's the new thing for the Cardinals. And like you mentioned about the Cardinals way and the Bengals way. Well, frankly, the Cardinals way sucks. We haven't won anything ever. We have never won a Super Bowl, and we've been to one. in the oldest franchise in the NFL. If that's your way, then you need to change that way. And if he's the guy to do it, power to him. Respect to Michael. He wants to win, and he's finding his way to it. And hopefully, this next step is the one towards it.
100%. Let me say hey to some of the folks that have dropped in real quick, and then we'll get. I've got a segue that I want to jump into. We got Chattison McGraw. Thanks, Chattison McGraw. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm actually sad to see Keim go, to be honest, but he was getting awful the past few years. Bad contracts, bad free agents, no great trades. Looking forward to something new, though. We got Cali Kid. Is Jim Hannafin still alive? Coach Jim Hart up pretty well. You answer that for him, Aaron. No, he's not. We got Paul G dropping in. Thanks for being here. Mike will look distraught in the presser. I think he was sincerely didn't enjoy having to fire a coach he's come to like as a human. You know, I think that was sincere, in my opinion. We got PHX Scotty. Thanks for being here. I can totally see Kliff joining Bill Belichick. A lot of people have said that. I agree. He played under him briefly, you know, when he was in the NFL. I think that's a great fit for him to go to. I agree. See who else is in here. We got Ghost Balls, shoulder, chest, pants, shoes. I think he's referring to Kliff's lucrative Curse of JCPenney catalog, menswear model.
Or he's a big Little Boosie fan.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what that is because I'm old. All right.
Let me down.
Yeah. And then we got K.R. Gordon. Oh, yeah, I'm back. Loving the firing. Okay. He's on board with that. And then this is going to be the segue. Paul's asked me, TCR, why in the world would you want Adrian Wilson as GM? Great player, great guy, scouting pro players, not very good. No experience dealing with contracts. So let me kind of address this and use this as a segue. Paul is referencing a video I put out back in November about how I would fix the Cardinals. And at the time I mentioned that, I think I would give Adrian Wilson a shot. Now I will tell you, Paul, my opinion has changed and since then. Now, let me also say, though, I don't buy into the whole argument Wilson learned under Keim, therefore he will suck. Jason Light worked under Keim and built a roster that won a Super Bowl. So I don't buy that argument. I think people are their own people who come up to that position. But I think I am now in the place where I want to bring someone from the outside, not because I think the stink of Keim is on the people inside the building, but from a pragmatic perspective, I think you mentioned the Cardinals way. The Cardinals have hired from inside so long. All these GMs, there's such an insular set of processes, and I think they need to bring in a GM who has worked in another organization who can say, this is how we did things there, right? And bring new processes. And I don't even think it's about a toxic culture. I don't think the culture is as bad as people think it is. I just really think it's just they haven't had fresh outside processes. So I, at this point, would actually, and we'll get to some of the candidates, I actually have now moved to the place where I want to go with a GM from another organization. In fact, actually on that video, I pinned a comment with that update. So if anyone who watches it now, who reads the comments, they see where I've kind of said, hey, this is actually what I would do now. So I've moved in that direction. And I also think that would be very good for Adrian Wilson's career to get to work under another GM from somewhere else, who can kind of teach him some other processes. And then that will help him to become a GM at some point, here or somewhere else. So there's your answer, Paul. I actually, at this point, have a different opinion on that. So real quick, Saltiest Gamer just jumped in here. Thanks for being here. What's up, everyone? Appreciate you hanging out with us. So let's use that as a segue to talking about the GM search. There's a list of names of folks that have been reported that they are going to interview them. Then they include, and actually, let me go ahead and I'm going to share this screen because I've got it's just a simple Word document. Y'all have to kind of bear with me on this, but let me make it bigger so you can read it. These are the names I've got so far of the GM candidates. Let me make it bigger so we can see them. All right. And just some notes that I've made about them. We have Ian Cunningham. He's currently a Bears assistant GM. He's only been there just this season. He was with the Eagles before that and then with the Ravens for a long time. There's a report that they're going to interview him this Thursday. He's also going to be interviewed by the Titans. We have, let me make that even a little bigger. I feel like it's a little hard for you all to see. We have Rand Carthon, who's a 49ers director of player personnel. He's been with them also, or he's been with the Rams and the Falcons before that in various roles. Adam Peters, the assistant GM, and he was also the VP of player personnel. He's been with the Broncos and with the Patriots. Monty Osafort, who is the Titans director of player personnel. He's been with the Patriots before that, the Texans and the Vikings. And most recently, report Jerry Reese. He's been with the Giants since 1994 through 2017. Started out in scouting roles and director of player personnel, and then the GM, I think, from 2007, I think, through 2017. I think those are the years. So anyway, these are the GM candidates. He's also interviewed, the two internal candidates, Q and Adrian Wilson. So looking at this, he said he's going to cast the net far and wide, right? And certainly he's looks like, he is doing that. And there's probably going to be some other names that he adds. So let's start with you, Aaron. What are your thoughts on the GM search, these candidates or other candidates? Any thoughts you want to mention on this?
To be honest, all of these names are the first time I'm hearing about them. Maybe that's just me living in rural Southwest Michigan.
Yeah.
But I'm neutral. I'm willing to, go and do the research. I kind of alluded earlier in the video how I would, I was really kind of impressed that we were talking Jerry Reese with the Giants. But as you were kind of explaining that, I always, or actually a name that I would want to throw possibly into the hat is actually Thomas Dimitroff. He's not really working in the NFL. He's working for an analytics company right now, but he took Atlanta from the depths of the NFL to the top, pretty fast with that Julio Jones trade. And they won 6 division championships, and they were this close to win the Super Bowl before we all know what happened. But you can't blame that on the team president or the GM. So the outside mind is going to be so refreshing for an almost familial ran front office for the Cardinals, and to have someone come in and be like, like you said, new ideas, different way of thinking. It's going to do a lot. And I think that for once, maybe the first time in a long time, that we would actually, once we go through a draft or two with this new GM, we would actually kind of know what this GM is going to do, because I've been saying it, and the last 2 years when I wrote for Raising Zona is like, if you think you're going to get the guy you want in the first round, well, think again. And then if you think you're going to get him again, well, think again, because he always shocked. You never knew what was going on with the draft process. So a steady hand with the draft would be welcomed, and I look forward to seeing who we end up choosing.
Nice. Kyler, what are your thoughts on the GM search and maybe some of these names?
I'm pretty impressed with the list as it stands right now. I think there are other impressive guys out there that deserve to be looked at. Just to address the A-Dub stuff, we all love him. We adored him as a player. Just because that's your heart talking doesn't mean that he deserves to be the general manager. I think a lot of Cardinals fans are getting those two signals mixed up. And it's not because he's tainted by his association with Steve Keim, like you pointed out. It's just that, is he really ready to take that role? Like he's held the position right, and he was a player, but statistically, being a player does not make you a better scout or a better GM. It has no correlation with your job performance. So just because he was a legend as a player does not guarantee that he's going to be a good GM. And like we've mentioned, I think you just have to get blood from outside the family. We have been European Habsburg breeding our front office for a long time.
I get the reference.
I don't even know what that is, but that's funny.
and it's not working. And the NFL is not a business where you get to hire consultants or you get to call up another team and be like, hey, how do you do this? How do you scout? Like, it's a competition. You don't get to do that. The only way to get that insight into how other organizations are run are by hiring people who have worked in those organizations. And you have to look at well-run, consistently successful teams like the Ravens, who are my favorite because their front office is pristine.
Yes.
Their drafts are beautiful, and their front office is never the part of the organization that's off. They put teams together that can win whatever. Now, things happen and life is life. You're not going to win the Super Bowl every year or anything like that. But that front office runs like a machine, and their drafts every year are insanely good. So someone like Joe Ortiz, who's their director of player personnel, would be a great candidate. And Ian Cunningham has had time with the Ravens, quite a lot of time with the Ravens. And I think he's one of the most intriguing. Jerry Reese is the big name, but Ian Cunningham right after him, and Adam Peters too. I mean, the 49ers put together good teams, even though they can't figure out the quarterback thing. But Adam Peters with the Patriots, Broncos during a pretty good time during that franchise's history, and the 49ers recently. There are good options here, and I think you just have to go with one of them over one of your guys. And I know that's going to hurt Bidwell as like I don't know if he thinks of himself as the father of this family or like some type of mafia boss, but you got to marry outside the family at some point.
I think the mafia boss analogy is a little apropos because I believe his great grandfather was Al Capone's lawyer.
Yeah.
So you know, we might be
runs in the family, right?
right. Real quick, let me say hey to some of the folks that jumped in here. Then we'll get to you, Troy. Caragord saying, "What's up, Joe? Appreciate you being here with us." We got AR is a new coach, wants his own QB. Is that a deal breaker? I think I think they're not. I think anyone they bring in is bringing in under the mindset that they're going to work with and try to quote unquote fix Kyler or whatever the situation around him. So I think yes. I guess you could say it's deal breaker. Like if you're not willing to work with Kyler, they're not going to hire you. That based on the contract and everything. Troy, what are your thoughts on the GM search and the GM list?
So like my initial thoughts are, if we were to move on from Keim, and again that. It's not so much anti-Adrian Wilson, anti-Quentin Harris. I wanted something who's progressive, analytic focused, and just really outside perspective, which Kyle Odegaard in one of his recent articles, and again, he was in the building, so he's very ingrained. He knows that organization.
He's no Mike Jurecki.
Exactly. Yeah. Mike Jurecki, who can't form a coherent sentence on Twitter, but sorry.
But he can get into your DMs and tell you to F off because he
does. And then block you.
And then block you.
And then block you. He said that the Cardinals have been getting better in the analytics department, but they're still miles off from the top organizations like the Eagles and Ravens. That's funny. And then an hour later, Ian Cunningham's name pops up. So that's always very intriguing to hear and exciting. But really, just at the end of the day, it's just someone who analytic focused, progressive, and really just can move this organization in the right direction. I mean, these are all it's this front of house personnel stuff. It's so hard. Like you can't really tell because you don't know whose decision what. Like the Ian Cunningham guy, he's been getting flack because of the Bears traded a second round pick for Chase Claypool, which no one likes that deal. So it's like, oh, is that his decision? We don't know. Whatever. It's so hard to tell. But I think their pedigree and the full resume is really what you got to look for. And so right now I'm seeing a lot of things we like, a lot of 49ers, Eagles, Ravens, a lot of these in Tennessee, who's been great for up until this year. They just fired their GM. I think the Jerry Reese one is a little strange because he's much older. And again, like Jordan Pia said, his draft history is kind of sketchy, but has a relationship with Sean Payton. So I'm not sure, I think as long as I just think we just got to get this franchise more into the 21st 21st, I guess even 22nd century. I don't know. More analytics. This isn't, we're Moneyball right now. We're the Oakland A's still talking about that guy doesn't run right or something when it's really
But what
gets
does
on
he
base.
do? He gets on base.
On base. So
yeah, and I think I want to just put up a comment here that to kind of segue to a point on this. Something that I just lost the comment about all these candidates. When you look at these candidates, like I think that you have to look at there's going to be something. They're going to have ties to. I think here we go. Lance says if we don't get a GM and coach that's already gelled before they get hired here, I think it's going to be tough sledding. And I think I want to use that as kind of a segue that I think a lot of these candidates are legitimate candidates on their own right, but I think they're also partly on the list because of potential coaches they're looking at. I don't think that's the case necessarily for all of the people they're going to interview. And again, I think they'd interview some of them regards that. But like you look at Ian Cunningham, right? He was with the Eagles until last year. And I think Shane Steichen, a name I've mentioned, will probably be a guy they interview, right? So they'll have familiarity. Obviously, the 49ers guys, D'Amico Ryans, if they plan to interview him, both of those candidates have worked with him. I don't see a direct connection with Monty Osford with any names I've seen. I don't think there's anyone out of the Patriots organization, the Titans, as a coaching candidate at this point. So he might just be a guy that because he has a good reputation. Jerry Reese, people have mentioned that Sean Payton was on the Giants coaching staff for a while. I guess I haven't fact checked that if anyone else can, but I've seen people say that. So maybe part of the I think he is an experienced GM and they want to do, as he said, cast the net far and wide, and that's another person to interview. But it might also be that if they are looking at Sean Payton, that's a guy that maybe has had familiarity to work with him. So I think there's also, you have to look at some of those connections as well. But I share, and anyone who's been here on these live streams long enough knows this. I share an affinity for the Ravens' way of doing things with Kyler here. So to me, Ian Cunningham, yes, Ian Cunningham to me is maybe the guy I like best on this list at this point in time. Because he's been a scout for the Ravens, so he learned under Ozzie Newsome. And then the Eagles have built a really good roster, right? So he's been there for that. So he's learned under two really well-run organizations. And then, to your point, Troy, the whole thing, I've heard people kind of say, well, that whole trade, that first-round pick or whatever for Chase Claypool, say, I don't want Ian Cunningham because I'm like, no, one, we don't know if he made that decision. And even if he did, like, there's this whole philosophy of process over results that is what basically means get the right process long-term and establish it, and don't make your decisions based on individual results, like a small sample size of results, right? One bad trade doesn't mean someone can't be a good GM. What you want is someone who has a good process, set up a good process, and over the long haul, there will be more good outcomes than bad outcomes, right? So that process over results. So I'm not going to ding anyone for one bad move, even if and we don't even know how much hand he had in that, right? So for me, that Ian Cunningham is really interesting, but these all look like good names in one way or another, and probably some of it has to do with maybe is there a coach that looks like they're emerging, as a favorite. So yeah, or Aaron.
I looked up the Sean Payton coaching history. It looks like he was with the Giants from 1999 to 2002. And apparently, according to Wikipedia, this is a really crazy tidbit about Sean Payton. On September 11th, 2001, the Giants were playing in Denver for the first Monday Night Football game of the season. And at about 7 a.m. that morning, they landed next to United Flight 93,
Wow.
which later crashed and was hijacked.
Crazy.
Which I didn't even know that. And that apparently is in Sean Payton's book. So
interesting. Okay. That's crazy. So yeah, so there is that connection there. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind as well. But I like the list of names. Some folks have mentioned in the chat that there's some other names that they think that have come up as candidates. So we'll hear more about them. Like Paul says, Mike Borgonzi, assistant Chiefs GM. I guess maybe, I don't know if you're saying we should interview him or if he is a candidate. Elliot Wolf and Ed Dobbs are two candidates as well. So we'll see how it plays out, right? Yeah, so I think I like the direction it's going to. Let me just get a couple comments and respond to MKT Bongo. Thanks for being here. Okay, but are you guys in a Hard Knocks episode like Joe? Finally made it on live. Good to see everyone.
I need some details on that.
So okay, I went to the Atlanta game, right? I with a good buddy of mine, and there I was actually sitting like 2 or 3 rows behind David Blau's wife and parents. I didn't realize who it was. But I remembered seeing them and, his parents and Cardinal stuff. And I just remember them. And then I saw the episode and they're talking to him. I'm like, oh, I was sitting right behind them. But I watched the last episode. There's 2 points where I can see myself this big in the background, my gray beard and my Marcus Golden jersey. So yes, there were 2 very brief points where I can see myself in the background. And if you don't know to look for me, you won't see me because it's just in the crowd. But I had a great time at the game. I was wearing my Marcus Golden jersey and I'm there. And actually a person who's a subscriber to the channel on Twitter was messaging me and he's like, hey, Marcus Golden was trying to get your attention. I'm like, what? Because I was like that close that you could see them. Apparently he saw my jersey and wanted to wave. So I'm like, I saw the tweet and I thanked the guy. And then at halftime, I made a point. I knew the players to be running back out. So I'm standing up and I'm watching. And when Marcus Golden comes running, I'm like, Marcus! And he saw me and I just like pointed at him. He waved and smiled. And so, I was one of probably only a few Marcus Golden jerseys, in that building. But, yeah, it was a great time. So yeah, that's the story about me being on Hard Knocks for just a brief second, right? So yes. Couple other folks real quick that jumped in here. Level 7, D-Hop for CD or D-Hop for Mike Williams. I don't think CD is going to be going anywhere. I think they trade him. They're trading him for draft picks. That's kind of my opinion, right? The catalog, Red Sea, are we happy? Everything I'm hearing from people is that most people are happy, with a few exceptions. Joey, thanks for being here. Let's see, Michael, can y'all just hire Vance as a head coach? And then Michael is a Seahawks fan. Thanks for being here. And I'll tie that to Lance's question here. Why fire Kliff and not Vance? Thoughts? So okay, the whole thing with Vance, my take on that is, they're not firing any of the rest of the coaching staff immediately. But what they're going to do is, one, they're not firing Vance because they plan to interview him as a candidate. Okay. So they're not going to fire him and then interview him. So they're going to retain him, but whoever the next head coach is, I think is just going to get to make the decision about their whole staff. So Vance, if the next head coach does not want to retain Vance, Vance will be leaving. Unless the next head coach is Vance, which I don't think it will be. So I think it's just more of a logistics thing. So, when the new head coach comes in, that person is going to get to choose if they want to retain anyone, if they want them to walk. So that's kind of my take on that. But of course, yeah, any GM that keeps Billy Davis needs to be fired.
No,
not Billy Davis, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Yes. We got Keenan Oken. Thanks for being here. I want Ken Dorsey or Eric Bieniemy. So yeah, so that's just kind of to address that. As Joe is a star now, I'm in the crowd. So, but okay. So I kind of monopolize that, but let's talk a little bit. Let's use that as a chance to talk about the coaches. So we there have been some names. They've mentioned that they're going to internally, interview Vance. I think as if nothing else, as a courtesy, or as crossing, looking at all options. I've mentioned in my video, I had D'Amico Ryans and Shane Steichen as my top 2. I know Troy has mentioned that with Shane Steichen, well, he's got a really good roster there, so maybe maybe he isn't necessarily all that in a bag of chips. I've also come to think Ben Johnson.
Well, and Jalen Hurts got hurt on a QB sneak, so
that's true. Yeah, that's
what's with Philly quarterbacks getting hurt when they take the ball?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know. So Ben Johnson to me is another name. The Detroit Lions offensive coordinator who I really like. So let's go around and kind of y'all's thoughts on the head on potential head coaches. Obviously, Sean Payton, everyone's talking about. So maybe talk about those are probably like aside. Like I would love Sean Payton. I just don't want to trade a first round pick for him. We've talked about that before. But if we get Sean Payton, I'll be happy. I just hope we don't give up a first round pick for him. Aside from Sean Payton, to me, it's DeMeco Ryans, Shane Steichen, and Ben Johnson are my top three aside from him. So why don't we go around and each of you give us your thoughts and maybe who some of your top coaching candidates you'd like to see are for the Cardinals. Let's start with Aaron.
Obviously, yeah, I think we're all in the same boat with Sean Payton. I think we would start doing cartwheels till the cows came home. But if we didn't get him, I actually would really love Jim Harbaugh. Because the moxie he has and the kind of the no BS attitude gives me a lot of reminders of what Bruce Arians was. And in the NFC West, I mean, nobody really has that ability right now. I mean, the Seahawks got in by because of the butt of Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it's not like the Niners, but it's kind of like you default. Someone has to win it. So basically, I think Harbaugh would come and be a welcome presence. And I remember, I think it was like after a Monday or Thursday night win against the Rams in St. Louis, like 2014, where I think we had like 6 or 7 sacks on them. And I can't remember what the exact count was, but Arians just dropped a one-liner right after the game, and it was just like the sweetest thing ever. And that fired up the fan base. I think Harbaugh's personality would, rile up and get people back into the stadium, which is something that Bidwell wanted to avoid, was looking like Allegiant Stadium for the Raiders and having everybody else come in. So Harbaugh would be my number 2. And then a very close second, DeMeco Ryans.
Okay, nice. Kyler, what are your thoughts?
Outside of the Sean Payton lottery, I think DeMeco Ryans is the front runner for my consideration. I think Vance Joseph would be the easiest way to kill fan enthusiasm for even the slightest rebuild. Whether he deserves it or not really isn't the question. It's just what can fans handle, and I don't think we can. So I don't think it will be Vance. I think that's just an internal thing, and doing the right thing and interviewing the guy. But DeMeco Ryans, he has just done wonders. Like he is a fabulous coach. I know it's a different side of the ball, but that's not always a bad thing. Ken Dorsey, I like a lot. Defensive coordinator for the Bills. I mean, they've been putting up points for a long time, and they benefit from having that connection with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. But it's just a pretty well-run offense, pretty efficient. And the same thing about Ben Johnson. I like him a lot. He is coming from a Detroit culture that at least is improving. And man, I was really rooting for the Lions at the second half of the season. Like they've got the grit, like they're just easy to root for. And Dan Campbell on live TV saying, "We're just playing hard so that they don't make the playoffs," was just like the dopest thing a coach has ever said. I love that. Jim Harbaugh, I think, is a very good coach. I don't think he's leaving Michigan. I think they will eventually give him the money that he wants.
I mean, I'll help get him there.
Yeah, you go kidnap Jim Harbaugh and you bring him in. I mean, he'd get the chance to play the Niners twice a year, so maybe he would like that. The craziest idea I've heard out there is Lincoln Riley. I think the last thing we need to do right now is hire another college coach. Another coach straight from college. You know, Jim Harbaugh has done it and walked the walk, so he's a different story.
No.
Yeah, no to Lincoln Riley, please. But Ken Dorsey, Ben Johnson, D'Amico Ryans, and obviously I'll be through the roof if Sean Payton actually becomes a coach. I do think he is the home run here, whereas all the others have their question marks because they've never been head coach before. But there are a lot of good candidates out there. There's a lot of good directions to go.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to say thank you to Back to Constitution with a super sticker. Thank you so much. A longtime supporter of the channel. I appreciate all that support. It's helped me to continue to build on what I'm doing. So thank you so much. Sincerely appreciate that. And all the folks who are channel members and supporters and everyone who watches the videos, that definitely helps. So Troy, what are your thoughts on coaches? Who are your kind of top names?
Yeah, I'm kind of in on the Sean Payton, obviously, train. Again, I'm going to reference him probably all day, but Kyle Odegaard says, and he's a smart guy, that it's not going to cost a first round pick. I know the Saints are saying that, but he says we would not have to give up our third pick because if it comes to the third pick and Sean Payton, I don't know if that might be a little too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
I know this is probably a tangent, but I know there's a lot of discourse going on about how many top 5 draft picks actually pan out versus how many coaches they get traded for first round. Like the coaches are far more successful. But Joe, I'm going to cater to your analytics side here and be like, the sample size is a lot smaller on the coach's side than it is on draft picks. So don't know if that's the best argument. So the Sean Payton, I think that's exactly what this organization needs, especially if he's coming with Vic Fangio, who's like the godfather of the modern NFL defense at the moment. Like, that's just very salivating at the moment. If not Sean Payton, then again, I'm going to repeat it. D'Amico Ryans is my number 2, just because that San Fran D is just insanely good. And like, other than Bosa and like Fred Warner, there's really not like a lot of ass kickers, but yet they're still just,
kicking ass.
Like, exactly. And every year,
Trey Greenlaw.
Yeah, but like these guys just keep coming in out of nowhere, and they just keep playing and doing so well.
Side tangent about the GM with Adam Peters. They've been building a roster that's probably going to compel 2 successive defensive coordinators into head coaching positions. They know how to build their team, and they know how to build their defense. Robert Saleh got a head coaching gig, and D'Amico Ryans, if not the coach for us, is going to be a head coach somewhere next year.
1,000%.
Koblenik is saying, imagine being a first-time GM and your first move is to draft a coach, right?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of instability. The thing with Ryans that worries me a bit is I don't know who the offensive coordinator would be, because I feel like we've just picked that, or the San Francisco coaching tree has been literally like picked to the bone. Like, I don't know who else is there that's of value or is good. I mean, I don't know, that could be super dismissive. I have this weird pie in the sky, not theory, but my dream pick. And I said this before the national championship to Joe, but I want to say it again. If he could make a play for Todd Monken, the OC for Georgia, who's NFL proven, he's did wonders under Dirk Cutter at the Bucks. I mean, if you just watched that game last night, that was an offensive dream. Yeah. But that's just pie in the sky and super theory, and I don't know, my hot take, as it were. And third, I think I'm more on the Frank Reich train than some other people are. I think he kind of got the raw end of the deal at Indy with the quarterback situations. The thing that worries me is that like when it went bad in Indy, it went bad pretty fast. Like, they couldn't beat the Jaguars to get into the playoffs. That's slightly worrying.
He was just doing malpractice with the play calls and the game time decisions.
So I don't know. I think the Frank Reich is the least exciting out of all of them, just because I think he's a little underrated for sure. But like, I don't know.
What I would suggest is, I think when you have a young head coach like D'Amico, let's say they brought in D'Amico Ryans, and you're right, that San Francisco offensive coaching tree has been picked clean, it seems like, but like, when you have a young coach, sometimes you get a veteran on the other side of the ball. That's like with Kliff, they brought in Vance. And what if Frank Reich was an offensive coordinator? Because it's not a shoo and he's going to get a head coaching gig. I mean, he'll get interviews, but there's only 6 head coaching openings. Maybe he might get
5
shut
right
out.
now.
5?
I think there's only 5.
So
but there could be a surprise.
Right. So if Peyton gets a job somewhere, which it seems like he will, and I think D'Amico Ryans will get one. There's enough names out there that it's possible he gets shut out as a head coach, and he being an offensive coordinator, that would be his next step. So someone like that might be an option at offensive coordinator, right? Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking. Frank Reich would be an amazing OC with D'Amico Ryans as head coach, as Jordan P says here. So that might be an interesting pairing with Ryans there.
And interesting enough, anecdotally, like I said one time, the thing I worry about with Kyler is that hopefully he's not following the Carson Wentz type story arc where when it's kind of good, you're not hearing much. When things are going bad, people say how difficult he is. He's kind of arrogant, blah, blah, blah. Frank Reich was the only one that really could get with Wentz and get the best out of Wentz. So maybe he'd be a good fit for Kyler. I don't know. And granted, I think some of those Kyler stories are a bit over exaggerated because some people in the building don't like him, but whatever. It is what it is. I mean, I'm not totally against it. I think it's the least exciting, but maybe that's not what this organization needs at this moment. Maybe it doesn't need exciting, just needs steady.
Yeah. I want to mention the Harbaugh thing, and I've gone on record on this before. I'm out on Harbaugh because of his abrasive personality. And I know there's some people think, no, that's what you need. You need someone coming here who's going to be a hard ass, who's going to straighten up whatever, this, that, and the other. But and that sounds appealing to some people's, kind of mentalities. But he's a guy who has a reputation for being hard to work with and abrasive. And for me, you look at what this organization has been through in terms of all the kind of turmoil and stuff and the off the field stuff and the drama and this, I think the last thing you need to do is bring in a coach who has a history of having had that stuff be with him, So to me, I don't want to bring that guy in for that reason. I know he's been a successful coach, but I think what you need is someone who's going to do a good job, but also not bring unnecessary drama. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Our Lord and Savior Odegaard kind of shut down the Harbaugh Arizona.
Nice.
He said
at the same time,
anything.
At the same time, though, if you have Jed York and oh my God, who's the other person that was crazy over it? Trent Baalke, ruining your roster, you'd go mad too.
Maybe, yeah. But I think there are a lot of reports that he's not going to be a candidate here or not interested in here or something. So I think it's probably a moot point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I think you've got a good point on the personality thing, though, because we already saw all the reports about tension between Kliff and Kyler. I don't think it's personal tension as much as it just was frustration at not winning football games. And to a degree, I don't agree with having to cater around the sensitivities of a young quarterback. But I work at a university with young 18 to 22-year-olds. So do you, Joe. And then Aaron, you work with young people now too. The Jim Harbaugh attitude, I just don't think vibes with that generation of people. And
you're right,
included among them. I mean, Kyler Murray's 25. He's 1 year younger than me, but we're still mentally children in many ways. And I just don't think that Jim Harbaugh hard ass energy is what's going to get through to a guy like Kyler. So I don't think we need to coddle the guy. He's an adult playing a professional game, getting paid a lot to do it. But why have an unnecessary personality conflict if you don't have to?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is Weinfist, when he was on with the PHNX guys, he alluded to that Kyler wants to be coached hard, and it was Kliff's kind of nonchalant personality that was a cause of the tension. But they're not confrontational people, I guess, so they would never talk about it. Surprise, surprise. But He's
Maybe.
Winefist alluded to that it was Kyler wanting to be coached hard, and it was Kliff just, I mean, I think we all know this about Kliff, and we kind of saw it that he treated everyone like professionals because they're not professional athletes. That kind of should be the standard, but that's not the reality anymore. It's like you're saying. I think men and people in general are aging at a slower rate these days just because of society and, how we're brought up. And 25-year-old men are not the same 25-year-old guys 20 years ago. There are different maturity levels. So totally agree with everything you guys saying.
And I think what you said, Kyler, is maybe part of the reason I'm a little more sympathetic towards Kyler's personality than Kyler Murray's personality than a lot of other people. I mean, I'm older, but like I work with college age, and I don't see anything about his personality that's all that atypical for his generation. And I just don't see it as a problem. Every generation, I think I messaged every generation since Socrates has thought the next generation is going to hell in a handbasket. And what was it you said that
what was it?
He thought Aristotle was an arrogant prick, probably.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Socrates thought Aristotle was a little prick, and he was
right. And I just think there's that kind of generational thing, and that I think is just not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. He's a little prickly, he's a little aloof, but he doesn't seem like a bad dude. And there are also a lot of people his age who I think his personality very much vibes with and get it, and it's real to them. So I just see that differently than a lot of people. So to me, it's not a big deal. But you need to find the right coach with this quarterback. And I think that we all would agree with the right pairing, because whether you like it or not, Kyler Murray is going to be here at least for another 3 years, because he is not tradable based on the dead cap hit. Wolf is asking, says Kyler tradable? If you look at the dead cap hit, realistically, you can't trade him for at least, I'd say, about 2 to 3 years from now. And even then, the dead cap money is ugly. So I think, I think we got to find a way to make it work. Like what we've seen from Kyler on the field, you can win with that if you have a good team around him. And I'll just mention kind of the DeMeco Ryans you talk about, because a lot of people say, well, we should go for an offensive coach. And I like that. But I also think you look at, like, I made this comparison before. Look at the way Seattle won their Super Bowl with Russell Wilson. A really good defense, a good running back, and a quarterback who made stuff happen, right? And they didn't, maybe a decent receiver, like, Doug Baldwin, but they did not have great receivers, and they didn't have great offensive line, right?
Still pedestrian.
Right. But they won a Super Bowl. So, like, what happens? Just imagine, bring DeMeco Ryans in here, build an elite defense, fix the offensive line, and have Kyler Murray and a few weapons. You can get enough of offense out of that to win. And if you have a really good defense, even if it fluctuates a little bit, you'll still win games, right? So to me, I'm in on the DeMeco Ryans approach for that reason, because, like, if you have a great defensive coach, you just need to have an offense that can get you enough. And Kyler and an offensive line can get you enough. Right.
I mean, look at the Steelers. They were 3-7. They kind of battened it down and finished, 6-1? And then, Joe, we were wrong. We thought this was the year Mike Tomlin wasn't going to go 500, right, and he went over 500. The dude is.
They were gifted. Elite. That was pure luck.
I don't care. He's the man.
You have Kenny Pickett back there, like come on now.
We don't give out Steelers praise on this channel.
I'm sorry, but I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's fantastic.
I agree.
In the last 20 years, what team has won a Super Bowl without a top 10 defense? Minus maybe the Chiefs, their Super Bowl. Their defense wasn't spectacular, but still might have been.
Patriots,
I think their defense tightens up in the playoffs, though. Like, that's kind of the Chiefs thing, is their defense plays well when it matters, which is mind-boggling. But
most of the Patriots Super Bowls came from top 10 defense. I don't think Brady's ever won a Super Bowl without a top 10 defense. The one Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl, the Green Bay defense was out of the world that year. The Steelers
sadly
took them to many Super Bowls in the early 2000s. The Seattle defense, the Legion of Boom, took them to Super Bowls and won them one. Like, the saying is there for a reason. Like, defense wins championships, and it's real. It's boring, but it is real. And if you have a guy like Kyler Murray who has the X factor of that, and you've got a defense that's going to carry you, Kyler Murray playing backyard football is going to put up enough points to win some games if your defense is good enough to hold on.
Yeah.
So having the little Russell Wilson type of quarterback like that is the perfect formula to a Super Bowl. So maybe a head coach that is defensive minded is the way to go. I mean, Steve Wilkes didn't pan out, but it's just because you have Kyler Murray under a big contract should not determine that is the type of head coach you have to get.
You can win with either. You can win with DeMeco Ryans if you get it right, and you can win with an offensive coach. There's not one formula for that, right? But it can work, right? So, level 7's been going on, so I'm going to get your comment. Why won't you guys acknowledge the fact that our defense personnel is built to run Zimmer? Vance, he's been commenting about you've been commenting about Vance as a top coach candidate. I don't think you do. I don't think that's the reason you make a decision. You don't hire a coach because you've built the personnel a certain way. You hire a coach because it's the right coach. You adjust the personnel. Vance Joseph has not done enough to earn to be to me a legitimate head coach candidate right now. If you're a defensive coordinator and you're going to be a head coach candidate, you better be like one of the top rated defense like DeMeco Ryans is, and Vance Joseph hasn't done that. So now I'm out on Vance Joseph as a top candidate. I don't care if they built the roster for him. They do this all. You do this all the time. You bring in a new coach. They find where their players fit in their scheme, and over a year or two, they change the roster to fit what they need. You don't hire someone for that reason. That's just So, but I want you've been kind of trumpeting that Vance Joseph. So yeah, level 7. I just don't see Vance Joseph. I don't think that's a reason to hire him. I don't think you hire him as for a number of reasons. But I know a couple of gentlemen need to get out of here. So I want to give everyone a chance. We could go on forever because there's a lot of comments, a lot of folks in the chat, and appreciate everyone who's been hanging out with us. Right. There's a lot going on, right? And so there's fans, there's energy. It's good. It's a little bit anxious, but it's good, I think. So why don't we, on our way out, let everyone just kind of say, whatever you want to say on your way out, and then promote anything you want to promote, anything you're working on or anything you're doing, or anything you want to say on your way out. So Aaron, your parting remarks.
It's great to finally, for the first time in 4 years, actually at the end of the season, be able to be like, I can wear this stuff, wear my Cardinals jersey and hat around, and not feel this just like someone's gonna be like, oh yeah, you're those guys, and be like, well, whoever this new coach is, I'm at this point, I'm fully ready to dive in, because I haven't really dove in honestly with the coach since Steve Wilkes got the hire, and honestly that went the way that it did. But I'm excited for the future. To quickly address Paul G's comment, I highly respect Buddy Morris. He knows a lot more than I do right now. Hopefully I know as much as he does as a high school strength coach. So I'm flattered by the company that you think I am in, but I got a long way to go. Just make sure you guys are checking out Joe and Kyler's stuff on Easy Sports Underground. I'm on there as well. I've only had time to write one article. I'm really going to work on getting some time to get some more up there. Thank all these guys for being able to get out here for tonight, because this was a lot of fun and I was looking forward to it. So it's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been good having you hanging out with us again, Aaron. Kyler, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, it's been so good to see you again, Aaron. It's nice to feel some type of excitement after such a slog through the last half of the season. It is maybe unfounded excitement because we don't know where we're going yet, but it's something. And it's nice to feel that way. It's nice to have a community to talk about that stuff with. We had a lot of good questions, and as always, I really enjoyed it. And after this, go check out azsportsunderground.com.
Awesome. Troy.
Yeah. Again, it's all the fear of the unknown at this point, you know? I mean, all this feels really great now, but like by the end of the week, it's Vance Joseph and Adrian Wilson. Oh man, it's gonna be a quick, yeah, right back down to earth. Which I don't think it will be, but you know, you always need a healthy dose of pessimism. But no, I'm excited. I hope everything turns out the way it will, and that I think next year is going to be a little more of the same, with just a little better. I think, you know, if we get in a run, we get in a run. Hope Kyler heals well, and then we're back at it. Because, you know, being a Cardinals fan, it's like a exercise in how much self-loathing you can handle. So, and the Suns aren't giving us any reprieve as of late. If anything, they're just laying it on another layer. So, buckle up, fellas. And I don't know. I've nothing to really shout out. If you like watching soccer, Premier League soccer, you can follow me because I'm a Tottenham fan. Another healthy dose of self-loathing. But I don't know. I will say my final thing is Sean Payton. He talked a lot about the Cardinals at some point in the, you know, on the herd. I don't think that's nothing. Just throwing that out there.
I agree. I think there's, and people have kind of commented how that when Michael Bidwell was asked about Sean Payton, he had a little bit of a
smile.
You know, I don't know if that's anything, but yeah. So, you know, I don't know, but yeah, thank you guys. It's been great hanging out with you guys again. I know you guys gotta get out of here. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Make sure you follow, go to azsportsunderground.com, check out our content, follow me on the Cardinal Rule, and watch for Mock Draft Mondays coming soon and sometime in the next week. Mock Draft Mondays. All right, thank you all. It's been great hanging out. I'm going to throw up a shout out for the channel members, and then we're going to get out of here. So again, thank you, everyone. Peace.
Jalen Carter.
O-line.